Welcome to our Retire Early lifestyle. Let's leap on over to the information you're waiting for. Number 1, credit card debt trap. We can safely say that about 70% to 80% of expats that move abroad do so because they were wowed by how cheap everything is. We have talked with hundreds of expats in Ecuador, and this is the number one reason they've shared with us why they even moved abroad. They're wowed by the expected costs. Americans think their own country is too expensive, and here's why. The USA is a debt culture. We've been literally brought up to believe that debt is a good thing. All of our lives we're told to go into major debt to purchase a car or a home. Here is where the problem comes in. We move abroad with our debt culture way of thinking. So if you're moving abroad with all your credit cards and the keep up with the expat Joneses way of thinking and how they spend money, your quality of life may not get much better living abroad. It will be the same as what you had in the USA. You may as well stay in expensive America. Or tear up the credit cards and get rid of the keep up with the Joneses mindset and then go abroad. Now first, pay off any outstanding debt, of course, and quit buying things on credit. We see expats carrying on as if they're still living in the USA, but they live in a much cheaper country and are not taking advantage of it. They stay in Little America and pay American prices. The locals think Americans are rich because of the way they spend money in their country. Americans are big consumers, and everywhere Americans go, they become money targets. Have you ever wondered why expat restaurants in cheap countries cost almost as much as in the USA? They know you'll just whip out that American Discover or Visa card and pay up the nose on dinner for two with wine and antipasto. In our past videos, we were able to show that expat vloggers were spending just as much dining out in the cheapest country to retire in the world, as they were told, as we were for waterfront dining in Rome, Italy. Go figure. Yes, you heard that right. We were paying the same amount in waterfront Rome, Italy as expat vloggers were in Cuenca, Ecuador to dine out.
I never understood why people would go to Cuenca, Ecuador to eat out in Cuenca, Ecuador and spend $25, $30 when you can come to Rome and do that.
I know.
Right?
Right.
And they got a nice little waterfront restaurants that you can eat out in. $25, $30. It's really touristy. I don't understand, guys. Explain yourself. €25. We know the price. So you get an antipasto mixed, first course spaghetti, clams. Then you get risotto creamed with scampi, which is sea critters, or
shrimp.
Shrimps, right? That's what I meant. I'm forgetting my English. In all this international travel, you forget your English. Fettuccine salmon. Wow, high class. So you get to pick one of those, I'm sure. And then the second course is either the fish with potatoes or what do you call that, squid. And you get your bread and your water. So all in all, a decent meal, high quality. And here we've got gnocchis with clams, risottos for 10. So all in all, not bad. A lot of restaurants to choose from here in Rome. And it's waterfront. And you can even get more basic.
Oh, wow, fish and chips.
You can get fish lasagna, fish lasagna, and fish and chips, $7.90. So how?
Fish and chips.
So
that's
you know,
a good price, I think.
if you want to be in the fast food place.
Now, does that not make you think? And these vloggers were promoting the idea that you should mimic what they're doing. You know, look at us, and do as we do. And this perpetuates the overspending mentality. Another example, when we helped Americans find homes, there was one thing they all had in common, and that was they all wanted as many bedrooms and bathrooms as they could possibly get in their rental home, even if they were only 1 or 2 people. Bigger is better to Americans. Americans often spend way more than they need to, and is why they usually end up telling others on forums a cost of living that certainly doesn't match up to the country's local economy. Just a side note you may find very interesting. We lived 13 years abroad and never used a credit card, and we never missed out on anything in life or any home comforts. We did everything that all the other expats did, but lived according to the local pricing structure of that country. Moving on to our next money trap. Number 2, the love, dating, marriage, well trap. You have to be very careful who you put your trust in at home or abroad. It's much more difficult to know if a foreign woman is after your money or if she's devising a money trap where you could become a victim of her enticements. You don't know how a foreign woman behaves and what they're all about. In short, you don't know their reputation, but she knows how you will behave towards her romantic advances, and she knows what you want because she's had a lot of practice with other Western men before you. It's her job. One thing they like that they do is they lie about being married. This is going on all over the place now, where they have found that women that were still legally married while living with a foreign boyfriend. This isn't just deceitful, but under Thai law, her husband can sue you for adultery. By the way, many of these Thai foreign women are married, and the husband is in on it. The whole affair begins when the man allows his emotions to dictate his actions without knowing a woman's character first, and then one thing leads to another. This is also perpetuated by the endless videos on the idea that women are literally a dime a dozen and just waiting at your beck and call. Just look at some of those thumbnails. Women for a song, says the mermaid. Now, untrustworthy people can come off as anything they think you want them to be to get what they want, and they're good at it because they've been doing it for a long time, and they learn about what works. Over the years, she has learned how to emotionally manipulate a Western man to request money from him. This is how she gets the foreigner to do what she wants, and it's all done through romantic and sexual enticements. What I'm about to tell you sounds like something you would tell your teenagers, but here it is. Keep emotions in check and remain friends until you really know what her intentions are and what she is really all about, unless you don't care that you're being used, abused, and exploited for your perceived wealth. Yes, because isn't that the entire reason why a foreign woman is interested in you specifically? I mean, let's be real. This is a real business these foreign women scammers have, and they make good money at it. They're not going to stop scamming unless sex tourism stops in Asia. And will that happen anytime soon? Hundreds of foreign expats that move to these Far East countries seeking love from a foreign woman or whatever it is are leaving broke, busted, and heartbroken, but mainly just broken, busted. Abstinence is your best way to not become an alcoholic or drug addict. It works. Our suggestion is stay as far away from the Far East as possible. Moving on to number 3, buying a car in a foreign country money trap. We lived 12 years abroad and didn't have a car. Can you believe it? It's easy to not have a car when you move abroad because most countries have very good public transportation. And really, not owning a car takes a big weight off your shoulders. For one, you don't have to buy costly car insurance, and 2, you don't have to buy expensive gas in a foreign country, and 3, you don't have to worry about maintenance of a car, and 4, you don't have to worry about driving in chaotic traffic, because that's how it is in a foreign country. Chaotic. We saw expats buying used cars that cost twice the amount of new ones back in the USA because they wanted a car or thought they needed a car to get around. But in most countries, you don't need a car. In Ecuador, there's the light rail electric tram and numerous buses that come every 5 minutes. And you can hire a taxi and go from one end of the town to the other for just $3. But as Americans, we are just so accustomed to doing things the way we've always done them, aren't we? Do we even consider alternatives before leaving home? And if you're too uncomfortable traveling around among the locals, that should tell you something about your chosen location. Maybe time to rethink the location. Just a thought. Moving on to number 4, buying property in a foreign country money trap. We've talked a lot about this in our videos, and we get it. North Americans want to invest in property abroad. They obviously want the asset or they wouldn't be doing something so risky. But the problem is foreign residency and even tourism works in trends. And when people quit moving to a country or city, or the incentive to buy property is no longer an option, as in the golden visas, then what are you going to do with your property? Expats are leaving. You may be sitting on that property for years. Who are you going to sell to? We were warning people 15 years ago. But to this day, it's still a trend, and there are still so many sad stories of people losing money on property abroad. We see this scenario often in the Move Abroad movement, where there is a wild frenzy to buy foreign property and then crime explodes, or the property for investment is no longer available, or tourism and foreign residency dries up, or you or your parents back home become severely ill and have to leave at once. And here you are with this asset that back home you could sell within a few months. But in a foreign country where the locals make 4 times less of an income than you do, well, they're not going to buy your property. Most expats end up selling at a loss. Buying property abroad is risky in other ways too, because there are numerous property scams and property fraudsters, and guess what? Foreigners are the target. Bungo! Right now, for an example, foreigners that bought property in an area called Andalusia, Spain, have gotten scammed by a property fraudster. The guy sold dozens of properties to foreigners he doesn't even own. And the same thing was happening in a top Italian area that was heavily promoted by the promotions. How about the scam where hundreds of foreigners bought property in Spain in 2023 and the homes were built on protected land? Apparently, all the homeowners are taking huge losses on their purchases. So it's not just a once-off thing, it's a reoccurring theme. There are property scammers in all countries, and foreigners are the target. And we also told you about the buying of properties called pre-construction property purchases. This is homes that are not yet built. The incentive is the buyer gets a discount if they buy the home sight unseen before it's even built. Unfortunately, hundreds of foreign residents and tourists are scammed each year in this way. It happened in Ecuador too. We've always rented when living abroad, because when you can rent for less than $400 a month, why buy? It also keeps you out of those risky property scam situations. Number 5, you spend more money than you make. Luxury trap. This one actually ties into number 1, where those credit cards become an expat's curse. But if you don't use them, then you don't have to worry about it, right? We literally know expats living it up in these cheap countries because they want to live higher end than they did in the USA. This one time we were showing an American couple some nice apartments in the local price range in Cuenca, and the man remarked about one of the apartments saying, "Wow, you can get that nice of an apartment for $300? And he looked at Frank and he said, "Frank, what can you find me for $600? He was looking for luxury at a very small price, but it doesn't work like that. However, foreign luxury will cost you, and people soon find out that spending $3,000 to $4,000 a month instead of $1,500 to $2,000 in a cheap country doesn't really get you that much more in value for some people. We know this for a fact. We were in the business. Expats often and do spend a lot more in these cheaper countries where they actually could be saving up for an emergency fund. All right, we're off to number 6. Not having an emergency fund of at least $10,000 trap. But even more is better. This isn't really a trap. It's more of something that when you move abroad, you should consider having an emergency fund. There are always those unforeseen issues that crop up in our lives, or that accident that we didn't know was going to happen, or the having to fly back to the States unexpectedly for an emergency. 2020 is a perfect example of a black swan type of event. No one was expecting it, but many had to pay much higher prices for flights just to get back home. Here are just some stories that we know of personally where expats had to leave behind homes and cars and stuff and move back to the States unexpectedly. Perhaps at a later date they came back to take care of their things, but who knows? Number 1, prices spiked so fast a retired lady expat from Eastern Europe on a small Social Security could not afford to live in Cuenca, Ecuador anymore. However, she since has moved back to Cuenca after we showed her and helped her to understand how she could live in Cuenca on her small pension, and now she lives in a very nice, big, comfortable rental for $300 in a good area, enjoying cost of living under $1,000. We know because she told us in a comment. Wish I could find the comment, but she said that she has a really nice rental now in Cuenca for $300, and it's in a really nice area. Number 2, the crime got so out of hand in Boquete, Chiriqui, Panama that hundreds, if not more, American and Canadian expats fled, leaving behind their homes in several gated expat subdivisions. Number 3, another expat lived in Cuenca for 2 years but moved back to the USA after her daughter had a baby. She realized that she wanted to be a grandmother. These are things we simply don't think about. Number 4, an older expat died unexpectedly while living in Cuenca, Ecuador. The daughter left behind her job and family because she had to go attend to her mother's empty house in Cuenca. She was going to try and find a caretaker for it while she tries to sell her mother's $500,000 home. This is where that emergency fund would have come in handy. The daughter said her mother had the home on the market for over a year already with no bites. They will probably have to sell at a big loss. Number 5, an older expat couple moved to Cuenca. The first night she became so ill with upper respiratory ailments, the couple had to leave Cuenca the very next day. She could not breathe. We always warned people about the altitude in Cuenca and Quito. It's high and it can cause health issues in some people. And that brings me to number 7. Falling for get-rich schemes, money traps. We've all heard the saying, if it sounds too good to be true, it probably is. But for some strange reason, we've observed how expats trust the local people more in foreign countries than they trust the people in their own country. We've seen it over and over again where the maid did it, or at least she was in on it with the gang of thugs, or the handyman did it. So, if we allow strangers into our home abroad, then how much more are we going to trust people trying to sell us a get-rich-quick scheme? There are so many of these abroad where the foreigners are the target, I couldn't list them all. But here are a few we'll end this video with. Number 1, the timeshare resells. Back in the 80s, Frank and I were almost scammed on one of these timeshares in Mexico. Glad we didn't fall for it, because later we learned that the very complex they were selling timeshares in, the sellers didn't have the rights to sell the timeshares. Number 2, fake investment scams. Whether it's buying a ghost business or real estate, there are hundreds of scams involving expats that live abroad because they're an easy target. The scary thing about it is there are always new scams popping up all the time, so you have to be watchful and aware. And number 3, Ponzi schemes. There are numerous Ponzi scheme scams abroad where expats become victims. Ponzi schemes promise high returns with little risk, making them particularly enticing to expats. Unfortunately, these schemes eventually collapse, leaving investors with substantial losses. Just remember, if it sounds too good to be true, it probably is. Yes, when you go abroad, you're not in Kansas anymore, and it's not Disneyland either. It's real true grit life, and you're the target. Hope you got something out of that today. Take care, stay safe, and bye-bye.